Another edition of the Rivals.com National Basketball Podcast, Florida Man and Friends. And you're hearing that music in the background. I'll tell you what, we stole that off of like some kind of sketchy website. I think producer Dave got it. So if you're listening to this and you make beats or you make music, by all means, hit me up and maybe we can give you a nominal fee for your work and plug you in here. This week, joined by Mike Boynton, the head coach at Oklahoma State and fellow New Yorker, I understand, which is good, but a Yankee fan, I'm told.
Yes, I am. Tried and true. But I'll be honest. When I was really, really young, the Yankees were pretty bad. This was in the '80s. All through the '80s, they stunk. Then we had a pretty good draft in the early '90s and got Jeter and Rivera and Pettit and Posada, and the rest was history. So I had a pretty good time once the mid '90s came. But my early years, when Jesse Barfield and Dave Winfield and Don Mattingly would run around in the Bronx, it wasn't very good for us.
Yeah, my team was winning a title over in Queens at that time.
Absolutely.
Which was good news for me. I'm glad to have you. Let's get right into it. The thing on everybody's mind is Cade. I'm sure you're not sick of answering questions about coaching him right now.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's actually been a complete joy to coach. And really, in many ways, he's probably different than a lot of people assume. A lot of people think young kid who's got a lot of hype. He's got a big head. He's arrogant. I mean, he couldn't be more different than that. He's extremely hardworking. He loves his teammates. His teammates love him. He's all about winning above anything else. He's not really into individual accolades. Obviously, he's got big goals personally. He wants to become a really good player at the next level. Make it to the NBA and ultimately be a really good player in that league. But he's been a joy to be here. So, no, I never get tired of answering questions about him.
It's so rare for him. Guys like him and when they come into college, everybody's expecting so much from them. In order to actually live up to the hype, they've almost got to be superhuman. And he's been great the first week. It is a small sample size. But, I mean, did you know you were going to get this out of him right away, or did you think there'd be more of a learning curve for him?
Well, you never really know how the kids are going to perform once the lights come on and,
Sure.
and the ball is tipped. But I've seen him work, right? And I've recruited Cade. I recruited Cade for 4 years, so I knew just about everything I needed to know about him, how he was wired, what was going to be able to give him a chance to have the most success, what type of roster we needed to build around him so that he could be his best. And obviously, we were able to do that over the last couple of years. And I'm just excited that he's happy. That he's playing with joy still, that this thing it's not like the weight of the world is on his shoulder. He knows that we care about him, we're vested in him, but he also knows that he doesn't have to do everything. He's capable of doing a lot for us, but he's got teammates who are certainly all able to help him have success and vice versa. He's the type of player that elevates the game of everyone around him.
I was reading something with him before you came on here, and he was talking about how you offered it. Oklahoma State offered him before he ever played a high school game. How did you find him? How did that come out? I mean, obviously he was a commodity probably when he was in 8th grade then, but how did you decide, okay, I feel comfortable enough to offer this 8th grader that's never even played a high school game?
Well, crazy as it is, it was actually his freshman year, but it was earlier and before his season started, and he wasn't being highly recruited at the time. I was actually didn't even go there to recruit him. That wasn't my intention when I first saw him. I was going to recruit one of his teammates who happened to be 2 years older than him. Kid actually goes to Texas Tech now, named Kyler Edwards.
Yeah, I know.
So I go in there, and I'm going to see Kyler, and I see this other kid. He's like 6'5" at the time. He's got a pretty good presence about himself. He handles the ball well. He shoots. He's talkative, so he's got some leadership skills. And I honestly thought he was a senior. And so I asked his coach, hey, tell me about this kid, maybe thinking I could help him go to a school, maybe
get him into Hofstra or something.
Yeah, get him into a small school. I'm an assistant coach at the time, mind you. And his coach says, nah, I mean, we're going to wait. He's just a freshman. And I immediately was like, no, I got to have him.
The line of thinking from, can I help this kid get to Hofstra or –
Yeah, he's special. Again, he had a maturity about himself. And, we just developed a great relationship on a personal level. Obviously, learned everything I needed to know about his family, found out what his goals were, and then worked as hard as we could for the next 3 years trying to build our program and to be in position that this would be an attractive place for him. And it all came together this summer.
Let me ask you this, and be real with me here, because I know the answer's got to be yes. Does it get under your skin when people want to dismiss this whole thing as, oh, you hired his brother? I mean, you still have to do the work, right? But you do hear that, right?
Yeah, it does get under my skin only because it totally is lazy. It's a lazy
100%.
Yeah, it's a lazy kind of path to walk down. It's the easy one, but it's lazy, right? You just have to ask the questions. I recruited Cade for 2.5 years before I ever met his brother, and didn't really have a relationship with his brother until I watched him coach and saw that he was a good coach, and I respected his coaching ability. Now, the other thing I'll say is I had a coaching position open on my staff, and whoever I hired in that position, one of his jobs was going to be to recruit really good players.
Sure, that's how it goes.
So, to me, it seems illogical that you wouldn't consider someone who's going to help you recruit the best player in the country. And so it kind of flies in the face. This stuff's happened forever. I don't remember all this gripe when Larry Brown hired Danny Manning's dad, when Mario Chalmers' dad was on Kansas' staff.
Now, it seems like it's different when a blue blood does it, though, right?
And DeLon Wagner's dad wound up at Memphis,
Yeah.
being that way. It's never been an issue. And so, although it gets under my skin, it doesn't keep me up at night. I know we did things the right way. I know the kid came here because of more than just his brother. And I know that I'm glad that both of them were here in our program today.
Well, and I think the proof in that is, and you said it is lazy, and it is because people don't understand that this kid could have just walked. I mean, the casual fan doesn't understand. This kid could have just walked to the G League and taken real money to play real basketball. How did you guys keep him from doing that? I mean, that's a giant win on its own, Like, he just decided he was so comfortable at Oklahoma State, that was it for him?
Well, again, it flies in the face of that lazy narrative.
100%.
This is about that. This actually was about the place he thought where he could achieve his goals the best. Because certainly he wants to be a professional basketball player, and that was on the table for him. He could have gone to any school in the country, but he thought that our relationship, the honesty that we were able to build that relationship based off of, was something that he didn't want to walk away from. And that for a year while he's in college, he wanted to play for a guy who believed in him before anybody else did.
And before he played a high school game.
Absolutely.
Let's move beyond him and kind of talk about the one and done thing. Where are you on this? Do you think it affects if they nix it, like they look like they're going to, and start letting high school kids back in the draft? What do you kind of think about how that impacts the college game?
I don't know how much it impacts. The truth is, there aren't that many guys who could do that.
Sure.
There really aren't. I mean, there aren't many guys who can go to college for 1 year and transition to have success. You've seen it so many times, even this past year. And this is no disrespect to any of the kids that went to Duke, but they had 3 guys who were supposed to be one and dones last year. None of them got picked in the first round of the draft, the first round. And so, yeah, it sounds nice and it sounds like a trendy thing to do, but it's really hard to make it in the NBA. I think kids need to be more cognizant of going to a place and being in a position where they can realize their dreams for a long time. And so it'll go away eventually. And those kids who can go, they'll go. I think the college game will be just fine because the kids that want to be in college, that understand that this is a part of their development process, will ultimately enjoy this part of the process even more, which is why Cade came here. He wanted to have the college experience. He wanted to be challenged.
We got to do something, I think, about the rule that if they sign with the agent or enter the draft, we got to let them come back, I think, because you and I are both old enough to remember before this one and done stuff where there were guys like Corleone Young and guys like that declared for the draft, didn't get picked, and then they're SOL. I think they got to do something about that before they do something with this rule. I don't know where you are on letting dudes come back to college.
My best friend in our whole world is a kid named Omar Cook. You may know his name. He's from Brooklyn, went to St. John's for a year. Had a good freshman year, led the nation in assists. He entered the draft with a promise that he would be picked in the first round. The draft didn't go the way he was told it would go. He should have been able to come back to school. Now, would he have? I don't know, but that option needs to be on the table. We need to incentivize kids being a part of college basketball a little bit better. We need to give them the option of, hey, you should be able to explore your dreams and still not throw away the reality that most of us are going to have to live. And playing in college basketball is something we want to have the best guys playing college basketball. And that starts with giving them the opportunity to explore the NBA, but also to be able to come back to school when that time comes.
You grew up Bed-Stuy, right?
I did, yeah.
There are a lot of dudes there that can play that people don't know their names.
Trust me. I know many of them. Grew up with several of them. And, it's one of the hotbeds of basketball in the whole world. But Brooklyn in itself, Park Slope, there's good players out of Park Slope, Clinton Hill, Fort Greene, Bushwick, Farragut. I mean, it's just all throughout the city. And I was fortunate to grow up in that competitive environment, which is really what gave me the edge and put me on a path to have success in my life.
The team's playing great right now. I want to move beyond Cade a little bit. I watched the Marquette game. I mean, you're a guy that stresses defense, and I know that, but all coaches stress defense. But, I mean, you guys defended. You dropped into a zone for a little while. That looked good. You held – I mean, you caused I think you set a school record for turnovers. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. And it was usually you don't associate a zone defense with forcing turnovers. People think of it as just a kind of a lazy kind of sit back and let the other team do what they want kind of defense. Well, we have the roster that can be very active as a defensive team, whether we're playing man or zone.
Are you going to see more of that from you guys this year? A little bit more zone or what? I know that's not really your calling card, but
it's something I've got available to us. I don't know if it's something that will become our dominant defense, but it's something obviously we've shown we can be effective in. The key is, can we continue to rebound at the level we need to? And when we are in the zone, can we still have the activity to force turnovers so we can get out and transition on the offensive end?
You got a young team. Usually that kind of defense comes around late. Were you surprised at how well they took to defending like that so quickly?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting us to be that effective in the zone. It was really kind of to change the rhythm. We got off to a slow start offensively, and I needed to settle the game down. And we really disrupted Marquette's rhythm to a point where it's almost like early on they hadn't seen it before. And so I was really pleased and really gave me a lot of motivation to stay with it much longer than I initially anticipated.
I want to move into some recruiting stuff with you too. It's been – obviously this is bonkers, right? Like, how are you handling finding kids, talking to kids in this kind of environment? I mean, you weren't able to get on the road. It's not like you can go to high school games. Is it live streams all day when you're not coaching? Has it been busier? I mean, how have you kind of adopted to recruiting in this COVID age?
I don't like it. I'll be honest.
I don't think anybody likes it.
Because some people by nature just rather sit and watch film. The reason we got Cade Cunningham, like I told you, I was the first person in this gym. Sure. And I outworked people for him. And I had more FaceTime with him and provided more opportunities for him to get to know me on a personal level. Well, you're losing that. We can't really develop the same type of relationship over a computer. And so I can't wait until we get this vaccine or some therapeutics or whatever it is so we can get past this virus and get back to it. But in the meantime, you got to do what you can do. You got to watch video. You got to call people. You got to do your diligence and doing your background. But you also have to have patience. One of the worst things a coach can do is panic in recruiting and take somebody who's not quite good enough. It's one thing to miss on a really good player. That happens all the time if you're recruiting at a high enough level. But to take a kid who can't help you, and then you got to figure out how to kind of part ways.
Yeah,
that's much more detrimental for you long term.
Find him a new spot or something. What, as far as what do you feel like you're missing out on most besides the relationships? Like from an evaluation standpoint, is it just the little stuff with how he interacts with his teammates in the huddle and the stuff that you can't see on a stream?
I love once I evaluated a kid and have determined that he's good enough long term to help us, whether it be next year, whether it be 2 years down the road. I love to go watch kids struggle. I really do, because that gives me an idea of how they're going to take coaching. I love to watch kids have bad games, lose games, get into maybe controversies with teammates, how they handle those things, because those are real things that are going to happen, when they get to college. Adversity is going to hit. And so a lot of times kids struggle, especially as freshmen, because they haven't faced enough adversity before. It's the first time where they don't go on the court and they're the best guy. It's the first time that they look across and somebody's just as big, fast, strong, athletic. And just because I'm the best kid from Brooklyn, the best kid from, Louisville, Kentucky is also good. I just don't know who he is. And so just having the opportunity to see him in those adverse situations and really getting to know who they are and how they respond is something that I miss the most.
Who are some of the other young guys on your team that have surprised you this year besides Cade? I don't want to focus completely on him because there are other guys, and there are other guys that have been playing well.
Absolutely. Matthew Alexander Moncrief, the two-time Canadian Player of the Year. He's a really, really good player for us, really athletic, had a big-time dunk last week in our game against Texas Southern. I think that made sports in the top 10. But the other kid who's played the best so far is the kid, Rondell Walker, from Oklahoma City. I think he had 19, and then he followed that up with 16 against Marquette.
And another freshman. You guys are –
another freshman. So we feel very good, even though we assume Cade's going to probably leave after this year. And we got a lot of the cupboard won't be bare when he leaves us.
Do you got to treat guys like Cade a little bit different? I mean, not from like a rules standpoint or anything, but from with some of these other guys, you're trying to develop them to become the best players they can in 2 or 3, 4 years. You're not going to have Cade next year. Do you have to coach him a little bit different to get the most out of him right now, as opposed to trying to build him to become a 4-year player?
Yeah, and I would say this: it's not a way that most people would assume you would treat him different. It's actually, I think, opposite of what people would assume is that we take it easy on him. Well, my job is to help make sure he's prepared for the next step of his career, which means I have to be harder on him than I do those guys that are going to have more time to develop. I got to challenge him more so that he understands, hey, there's certain things you got to do today that can translate to the NBA tomorrow. Those other guys, I got to do things that just translate to Big 12 basketball for the next couple of years. For him, I got to challenge him and push him and put him in positions where he understands, hey, you got to take care of your body. You got to get in the cold tub after practice. You got to stretch. You got to use the massage guns. You got to take advantage of all these things that are going to put you in position where when you get drafted, that's not the end. That's the beginning of you having a long career in the NBA because you're prepared the right way.
We got to talk about your road to Stillwater. You're sitting in your office now, I assume?
I am, yeah.
So I was read up on you before the interview, obviously, more than I already knew. You really thought you were going to be the head coach at Stephen F. Austin when Underwood took this job, right?
Yeah, probably the most confident that I've ever been in wanting to get a job. It's the only real head coaching job I thought I had any chance at. And I had been with Brad for the entire time that he was there. We won almost 90 games in 3 years. Went to the tournament every year, advanced in the tournament twice. Mm-hmm. And we had built a pretty good thing. And I thought, quite naturally, I'd be the next in line once he left. And for whatever reason, they decided to go in a different direction. And so I came up here a little reluctantly, to be honest, a little salty about it.
What? Just because you didn't get the job, or?
Yeah, not that I didn't want to be here, but I thought that it was my time. I thought I'd earned the opportunity to be a head coach then.
Sure.
But little do I know, that wasn't the job for me. And so I came up here with a good attitude after I got over my salty feelings, and I worked as hard as I could to try to help Brad build the program here and have as much success being an assistant coach as we could. And then he left here after 1 year. And I'd never even imagined, right?
Sure.
Being a head coach at Oklahoma State. Heck, I couldn't get the job at Stephen F. Austin.
Now you're the high major, the head man, right?
All of a sudden, a week later, I'm the head coach here, and the rest is history. We've worked really hard to put our program back in position to be nationally relevant. And I think, as indicated by now, we're on TV every game. People want to know what Cade's doing, what the rest of our young guys are going to be. I think we're headed in the right direction.
That week of your life, did it seem like a dream? Brad, I'm sure you didn't know he was going to leave. He leaves. And then 6 days later, you're the head coach of Oklahoma State. I mean, how does your family take that? How did you take that?
No, it was surreal. And I don't even know. I don't even know if I could be honest and tell you that it was like a dream. I never dreamed of being a head coach at Oklahoma State. People ask me that about the Barclays. So we took our team back to play at the Barclays. We played in the preseason NIT last year. And people ask me the same thing. Is it like a dream, like coaching a game in Brooklyn? I said, no, I couldn't dream this when I was younger.
Because there was no arena.
There was no team. Like this didn't even exist, right? And so I feel very fortunate to be here. I'm glad that was a life-changing week for me. I'm thankful that the administration here believed enough in me to give me this opportunity. And my job now is to make sure that I show them that they didn't make a mistake, that I'm going to work as hard as I can to put us in position to have success. When
Brad left and you interviewed, when you left that interview, did you think it was a courtesy interview, or did you think I really got a shot now? I mean, when did it dawn on you that you have the chance to be the head coach at Oklahoma State?
You know what? Going into the interview, I felt like it was a courtesy interview.
Okay.
But during the interview, I thought it was pretty serious. I had been through that process a year before at Stephen F. And so what's that, Ed? So when I was going through it here, I felt very confident that I was going to represent myself well, and I was going to let the chips fall where they may. But once I left, I felt I represented myself well, and I felt even better once they called me to follow up and ask more questions and inquire a little bit more about philosophies in more detail. And so I felt good that, this was a legitimate chance, and I gave everything I had to try to get the job, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that they're proud of the selection they made.
When they're calling, and you're doing a great job, when they call you on a follow-up like that, and they're asking about philosophies, what kind of questions are those, and who's asking them? Is the AD asking you about offensive sets? I mean,
it's the AD, it's the president. The interview was pretty generic, I would say. It was about, hey, what are your recruiting philosophies? Why do you think you can do the job? What makes us believe that you can motivate kids? How are you going to hold kids accountable? And so the next day it was more about, well, what will your staff look like?
There you go.
Where do you think we can get good players? build our program into a championship caliber program again? What type of resources after being here for a year do you think we need to improve? What do you think of our facilities? How do we help our next head coach become a successful head coach? And so that made me feel like, they want to know what I think, because maybe I'm the guy that they want to help pour these resources into. And so that follow-up made me feel a lot better.
And one of those questions I want you to expand on that they asked you, where do you think you can get these players from? Are there areas of the country that you like to recruit more than others? Like, do you like to go up to New York if you had your druthers?
Yeah, I obviously have an affinity for basketball in New York City. I think those kids have a certain toughness and an edge. I think basketball is important in the city. Playing basketball or playing any sport in the area where it's important, it means a little bit more, right? It meant something for me to be from Brooklyn. Every time I played, I carried that with me. And so absolutely. But the truth is, there's some really good players in our area. We got good players in the state. Rondell Walker, as we talked about, is from Oklahoma. I got 2 other kids from the state. Texas, the state of Texas has been really good to us. Dallas in particular, it's about a 4-hour drive. That's where Cade's from. Chris Harris, Avery Anderson, Isaac Likely, got a kid, Montreal Pena. He's from that Arlington area as well. So we've got a lot of good players from that area, and we'll continue to mine it.
I got 2 more things for you that I've asked every coach we've ever had on the show, and they've yielded pretty interesting answers. The first one is a rule change. Let's say that the NCAA appoints Mike Boynton head of everything, and you can change one rule, anything you want, on the court, recruiting. Which one are you going after, and what are you changing?
Well, the one thing I would say on the court is I would definitely advance the basketball in the last 2 minutes of a college basketball game after a made basket. Okay. I think that would create some more situations that coaches would have to show, some creativity to stop people or to get baskets and at the end of the game, kind of like the NBA does. Off the court, I would start with the little things, not being able to spend time with the kids, not being able to buy them, meals or have them to your house. Like, we need to be able to pour into these kids and develop real relationships with them. So some of the kind of nuanced rules where, you can't buy a kid a meal or you can't take a kid, to the movies or something like that. I mean, we talk about being a family, but some of the rules make it a little bit more restrictive than it needs to be in order to really live that out.
No, it seems insane that there's no difference in that rule book between buying a kid nachos and buying him a Ferrari,
No question, right? You would think that'd be an easy one to kind of clarify. You can't get them a car. Yeah, okay, I understand that. But, can I buy a steak? It's okay. Some of these kids have never eaten one before.
Last one. We almost had them with all these coaches. They've been pretty easy. Is there a recruiting thing out there from your past where there was a kid where you feel like you almost had him that ended up being a star somewhere else that maybe you feel like you just missed out on?
Montrezl Harrell, when I was an assistant coach at South Carolina, I thought he was done. I thought he was coming to South Carolina. We recruited him pretty heavily, and before anybody else did. He's from a super, super small town in North Carolina. Really, us and Virginia Tech were the only schools recruiting him.
How'd you get onto him?
Just kind of working North Carolina, the AU scene back there. He was a kid that we kind of knew or felt just had the type of game that would translate the way we played. And then we wound up not taking him. He goes to Virginia Tech because we get a kid named Anthony Gill who ended up at Virginia.
Oh, you guys took a kid over him. He didn't spurn you guys. No. Oh, no.
Yeah. And then obviously Seth Greenberg loses his job at Virginia Tech. He ends up at Louisville. I think he won a national championship at Louisville, in fact. And that's one that I sometimes kick myself over.
Yeah, that happens, man. Well, I'm glad you came on, and hopefully, we'll get back on the road this offseason. I'll be able to see you in person, but I appreciate you. Tell your man, Eric Pastrana, I said, what's up?
We'll do it.
He and I used to run around together when he was down here at FIU. So
he looks forward to getting back there as often as he can.
Yeah, I bet. All right. We'll see you soon, Mike. Appreciate you.